Hello, creative coders. This is a video where I'm going to talk about using RiTa.js, p5.js, and Paged.js all together to produce a book, specifically a PDF. This is a video I'm creating for my creative coding class, but I will probably just make this public because I couldn't find a good tutorial that put all these three things together. I figured out a way to do it, so I thought I'd share this with the world, I guess. So my name is Zach Whalen, and I am excited to talk to you about this process. I'm going to try to keep this pretty focused, but I don't have time for multiple takes or editing. Okay, so let me get started. So here's what I'm going to be talking about in this tutorial. I'm going to show an example of what I'm talking about. It's a PDF. It's a book that I generated a few minutes ago called miniquacks.pdf. I'm going to talk a little bit about the DOM, which is a concept that will be useful here that I'll be using. I'm going to quickly look at the libraries that are involved here, and then talk a bit about layout, and finally something about URLs. I'm going to be using open processing to put all this together, so part of what I demo here will be specific to that. So first of all, let me talk about miniquacks. So I'm hiding the file name miniquacks.pdf. It's an example of the kind of thing that I can produce with some code and that I will show you how to do in this video. So let's switch over. Allow me to switch over to that. Switching my scenes, here we go, there it is. I'm still here, but I'm smaller. This is an example of what I'm talking about. It's a PDF. I could print this out and then bind it and then call it a book. So it, in a lot of ways, looks already like a book. It is missing some key features though, which you might notice if you look at it closely. It has a lot of words, so we're good there. It has the word quack many times, but it's, it's there. It is missing page numbers. It is also strange that the first page is the left page, and a few other things that you might notice if you look at it longer, but it is hopefully recognizable as a book, and that's the nice thing about the PDF document format. The less convenient thing about the PDF for the way that we are doing things in this class is that it's not always easy to get from web content or JavaScript content to a PDF. And so that's why the set of tools that I've got here should hopefully be helpful. All right, so let's talk about how this all is coming together. So DOM, it's an acronym, and there are different acronyms or abbreviations that might be. But in this case, I'm talking about the document object model. In this class, we've been doing stuff on the web, mostly with JavaScript, but it's really three things. I mean, the web is really mostly made of three things when we think about the front end, at least: HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, cascading style sheets. And when they are all coming together, the way that they talk to each other is through a set of concepts called the document object model. So I'm going to be manipulating that, working with that directly here. That's why p5.js is actually useful, even though we aren't going to be doing drawing to a canvas, which is what p5.js mainly does, and most people are using it for. We are going to be using several different libraries, though, so I'll talk a bit about those three. I don't want to go into a ton of detail. I just want to show what these are and talk about what they are doing. So let me switch my thing back here. So here I am. There's the book again. First up, of course, p5.js. p5.js.org is the website, and we've been using it for a while. And so if you're learning along with this class, you've been exposed to JavaScript this way, and many of the things that you've been doing are JavaScript technically, but actually they are the p5.js version of JavaScript, which helps make some things easier. And yeah, basically, that's pretty much. It adds a lot of things. I was almost about to say that it makes some things harder, but not really. It just makes the things that you want to do, easier to do. So that's what that's for. We have also already seen RiTa.js in this class, and RiTa is a set of different functions, methods, tools to manipulate or generate text. So it's very, very useful. It has a lot of things built into it. We did the RiTa.grammar part of it. We looked at that for the House of Dust exercise recently. It is similar to Tracery as far as that goes. You can generate text through a context-free grammar. Very convenient, and a tried and true method for computational creativity. There are lots of other things here that I'm not going to go into, but if you want to generate some text in a structured way, deterministic or random, you're going to find a tool here that will work for you. We're also going to be using, the main thing I'm going to be using, or well, not main thing, but the main different thing that I'm adding here is something called Paged.js. And this is another JavaScript library. It is a set of tools. It's actually more than JavaScript. It includes some CSS. It also includes some expectations about how the HTML needs to be constructed. So it's really working at the level of the DOM to create a print-friendly layout for web-first content or web-coded content. So bringing these all together was what I was hoping to do here with this project and with this video. So let me get into that. All right, let me see if I had another. Did I have another slide on this one? I don't know if the background audio is coming through very much, but I do have lots of people in the building today. I felt like using the chroma key background here, so I'm in one of the studios on campus, but it's not a soundproof studio, but that's okay. Okay, so here's what we're working toward. This is a template file or project. This is a project in open processing, and I created this earlier, and I've shared this with students in the class. I guess I'll put the link in the YouTube description as well in case anyone else finds this. It's working here, so I'm going to show it to you in its working form, and then I'm going to start with a different version that is not working yet, and then gradually add pieces of it so I can explain them. If I hit the play button here, I'll see what this looks like. This is a print-like layout. It has page numbers, it has chapters, it has headings, it has text, it has a lot of things in here. And this is what I'm giving you if you're student classes or whatever. I'm giving you this to start with if you would like. You can also generate text and PDFs in lots of other ways. So if you would rather start from a different method, that's totally fine as well. Okay, so this is a fork. I made a fork of that project, and this is that fork. This is a not working fork. This is it's just here, and then I've got a lot of things commented out that I'm going to gradually add back in. Actually, this is extra. I don't need that at all. So here we are. Now this is the sort of starting point that I wanted to start with here. And if I run the sketch, nothing happens, right? So there's nothing here yet. That's okay. Didn't expect anything to happen. All right, let me navigate this a little bit. So this is the sketch.js tab. I'm in open processing. This is sketch.js. This is where I'm going to write most of my code. I am, by the way, set up in HTML/CSS/JS mode for the editor. So that's important. If you, let's try it right above my head here. If you are using p5.js mode, then it will not give you access to some of the stuff that I'm going to be needing to use, that you'll be needing to use here. Specifically, the p5.js mode deals with local files differently, I think. I mean, that seems to be what's happening. So make sure that it's in HTML, CSS, JavaScript mode, and basically it's just a generic canvas to make web content on. So there are several things in the index.html file that are important, so don't change these unless, I guess, they stop working and you need to update them at some point. This is the first part that is loading Paged.js. It is a script tag. Notice there's a defer attribute added here. That's important. Basically, you're going to use this, so don't worry about trying to type this or whatever. But that's where I'm including the Paged.js polyfill, which is the rendering library. And then RiTa.js is the text generator. So this script line will include it that way. I'm including sketch.js, which is my code that I can write here. I'm also including two separate style sheets. One is called interface.css and one is called style.css. If you are working on this and you start from a template, you would want to make changes and tweaks and so on in style.css. This is the place where you can make adjustments. And a lot of these adjustments are going to have fairly intuitive CSS names, things like margin left, 25 millimeters. Guess what that does? That adjusts the left margin by 25 millimeters, or sets it to 25 millimeters. It's got a couple of other interesting selectors, though. So @page::left is a pseudo selector for the left-facing page, or the verso page. @page::right is for the right page. So you might notice that I've got margin left and margin right. The values are swapped. So that means that on a left-facing page, a left-face page, you're going to have more of a margin on the left side of it. So the outside of your book edges are going to have more white space than the part near the spine of the book. There are various other adjustments here. If you want to learn more about the different options, then I'm basically going to recommend you go here to the Paged.js documentation. It is quite good, and really the main one that is useful, the main chapter here that I refer to a lot when I'm working on something with this is this one. It's just called Web Design for Print, and it goes over the structures and the things about how the different special CSS selectors work here. Okay, so back to the sketch. Interface.css is a bunch of things that are loading the variables that Page.js is going to need, so don't modify this, but you do need it, so it is there. And it is included on this line here, or this line, it's pulling in that interface.css. So again, if you want to make changes, use style.css. There it is. Lots and lots of options there. I'm also doing some kind of fancy things here to do an incrementer within CSS, but yeah, you can change that if you want or just use it, totally fine. Okay, so let's do some things. This is p5.js now, and you might notice some things are kind of unusual about my p5.js sketch. I have a preload function. We've used that before to load files like images, and you also might find it useful to load a text file. I've got a setup function. I don't have a draw function though, and that's because I'm not using a canvas at all. I'm actually just saying no canvas. No canvas is like no loop in that it just turns that thing off. So no loop, don't need a loop, no animation. And I also don't even have a canvas. So it probably is redundant to add no loop, but I guess I'll just leave it there. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is using p5.js and its functions for accessing and manipulating DOM elements to create some DOM elements. A DOM element is an HTML element. It's a part of your web page. So let's take a look at the HTML, index.html. What I'm going to be doing when I run the code, some of the code here, when I uncomment it and make it runnable, is adding some HTML, injecting some HTML into this page. It's going to happen on the fly whenever the page is loaded in a browser, so I won't be able to see it here, but I will show you how I'll show it to you. Right, so it's going to end up down in here. It's going to end up adding itself inside this div ID equals content. Some other stuff here, by the way, you do need to keep in place. That just has to do with the asynchronous loading of the libraries. So div ID equals content. There's nothing in it right now, but let's take a look at what happens if we start adding some elements to it. In fact, let me just go ahead and do this. So we can see that there's nothing happening yet. If I view the page source, we should be able to see it. Well, it's hard to get to the source on the way open processing puts things together. So let me add a bit of content so it actually will show up in a way that's easier to find. Actually, I'll just say something. I'll just add a quick, not O, I'll add a quick little hello here just to show you that it is working. So I'll save that, and I will take a look at that. And there's the hello. It's way up there in the top. And if I inspect that, you can see that, yeah, it is just basic HTML so far. And I'm using the element inspector, the developer tool in the web browser to show you what the rendered HTML code looks like. So this is what the browser is interpreting as the code. It's not what I wrote necessarily. It is so far, but it is not necessarily what I wrote. It's what the browser interpreted. And yeah, we see it that way. Okay, so I'll close that out. Now I'm going to use p5.js to create some HTML elements on the fly. Some things that don't exist in the HTML but will exist after the JavaScript runs. So if I go to my sketch.js, I've got this line here commented. If I uncomment it, it'll bring it back. This is a p5.js function called createElement, and I have the URL for the documentation to it here. So you should always check documentation. CreateElement is a function that lets you, as the name says, create an HTML element. In this case, it makes an element called, I guess, h5. I don't know why you would want that, but there it is. In this case, down here, it makes an element called h5 and then adds the content p5.js to it. So it makes this look right here. That is all you need to do. It just kind of puts it there. Once it exists as an HTML element, you can do different things to manipulate it. But we don't need to because Paged.js is going to do all that manipulation for us. We just need to create them, and then as long as we create them in the order we want them, Paged.js should handle everything else. So that's an interesting color word, deep pink. Never noticed that before. Okay, so that's the basic goal. Where was I? Back here. So I've got a create element function. H1 is the type of element I want to create, and I'm going to put into that the text title goes here. So I'm going to hit save. Always a good idea to save and run that, and let's see what happens. And there we go. We have a title. Title goes here. Now, if I right-click on it, I can just take a look at it. That just so that it exists. You notice I didn't type out the less than sign, H1 greater than sign, title goes here, all that. I didn't type those characters. They're implied because p5.js just made that element for me, and it stuck it where I told it to stick that element, and yeah, it just works. It's just there. Actually, it stuck it after that content element. That's interesting. Doesn't matter. It works anyway. I thought it was going to add it to the inside of it. I feel like it did in an earlier iteration of this exercise, but whatever, it's fine. Now, this doesn't look like a book yet, obviously. It's just, the text appearing on the screen in a large font. It is an H1 element, but it is not the title of a book yet. It is just an H1 element, and the phrase title goes here. obviously you would want to replace that with your actual title. So let's turn this into a book, or let's let Paged.js turn this into a book. This little line here that says window.pagepolyfill.preview will activate the, it'll trigger the rendering. So if I go ahead and save that and then run it, it's going to show up now in a book-like layout. It is a single-page book so far, but it is appearing on the recto side like I would expect the cover of a book or a title page of a book, and it is laid out in a left to right kind of fashion. Harder to see when there's only one, but it will, trust me, it'll continue to add pages as we go. So let's add some pages. All right, so create element can be used to create any kind of HTML element. So on this line here, I'm making an H2 element, and I'm giving it the text, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. If I hit play, there we go. So now it is, title goes here is the cover page, and as I scroll down, you'll see that chapter 1 starts on a recto page as well, and it says all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. So that's that title. All right, it's pages 1, 2, 3, again, laid out like a book. Looks good so far, I hope. You can see I've got page numbers appearing there. Those page numbers, by the way, and the way that the chapter heading is and all that, these are things that I have coded in this style.css document. So if you want to change any of those, that's where they are. There's the word chapter here. I've actually added that word chapter so you don't have to type chapter 1, whatever that is. I'm also counting the chapters automatically, so you don't have to say what chapter number it is. Just making an H2 will put that in place as a chapter-like title, or looks like a chapter title. It'll add the word chapter and the number for that chapter and a colon, and then, good to go. If you don't want that, if you want it to just show up as, that title itself, you could comment that line out. You can change it to something else. It's up to you if it's your book, so whatever you'd like. Now, I do like that, so I'm going to put it back, but if you're making a book with this method, then it is up to you what you want to do. Okay, so another tour group or some sort just came through here, so hopefully that sound isn't too loud in my microphone here. All right, so let me go back to the sketch and generate some more content. Of course, you can make, like I said, any kind of element. You can also, there are just some shortcuts. So there's create p, which is the same thing as create element, quote p, and then the content. So it's just a quicker way to type it. It's really the same function. But it's create p, and then if you say all work and no, well, in this case I've typed all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. If you have any other kind of string content, you could plop it in place there and then create a paragraph that way. But I'll just do one at a time here. I just wanted to mainly show you in this case that there is this function called create p. There are other things that are like that are abbreviations, like create a to make a link. Then there's a bunch of other, it doesn't matter. I hit play, there we go. And now I have all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, and then that first paragraph of that chapter, which happens to have the same text in it. So we are on our way to writing a book. Now, of course, because each of these type of elements that create, each of these functions that create an element accepts a string, so it is possible to create strings on the fly, to use variables, to make a loop that will add content in a structured kind of way. Anything that you can do over and over again, anything that you can do with any of the concepts that we've encountered so far in class, the procedural generated kind of things, all that is possible here as long as the thing that you're producing ends up being a string. So in this case, I've got it set up to do that a few times. You notice this is a nested loop, which is what we did for the grid exercises. In this case, it's going to make 4 chapters. I'm using C as the counter for that, and each time that C loop runs, then it's going to make an H2, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. And then for each of those chapters, it's going to start the next for loop. This is a P loop that I'm calling P, I've called the counter P for paragraph. And the function call here is create P, and then it's the same text again, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. So let's see how that looks. If I hit play, title goes here, is still there. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, that's still my chapter 1. But chapters 2 and beyond are going to be generated automatically by that for loop, and then the for loop within that, each of those for loops is going to create each of these paragraphs in the chapter. So good to go, right? All right, so we have a book or a book-like thing. It does kind of look like a book. I don't have a PDF yet, by the way. There is a sort of a sneaky way you have to get a PDF out of this, but I'll show you that. In this case, though, I want to show you how to you can get content from other places as well. So I'm going to just uncomment this block here to demonstrate how to get something out of RiTA. There are lots of other things in RiTA, lots of ways you can get something out of RiTA. In this case, what I'm doing with RiTA is just asking it to provide a random word, and I'm specifying for each of these requests a particular part of speech. It's not very, well, you'll see. You'll see the results. The results will vary. But I'll just kind of comment through what it's doing here. It's another loop. So I've got I have a call to create element to add another h2, and this one just happens to have the same title or similar title. I'm calling this chapter all something and no something makes Jack a something something. I guess I should make that a proper noun, capital J. And now I've got a for loop. I'm using R as the counter, and it's going through and it's constructing a string. It's a little messy looking, honestly, but hopefully you can see what's happening here. The phrase all, and then endo, and then make Jack a. These are lines of text from my sentence, and I'm thinking of that basically as a template. And then in each of these places, instead of like using a replacement grammar token like we did the other day, in this case I'm just calling RiTA, and then I'm using RiTa's random word function, and I'm asking RiTA, give me any verb, give me any verb again. In this case, give me an adjective, and then in this case, give me a noun. These part of speech symbols, by the way, so it's an object. It's enclosed in curly brackets to indicate that this is an object, and POS stands for part of speech, and RiTA expects it to use there's a standard set of codes for parts of speech in language processing. VB is a verb, JJ is an adjective, NN is a noun. There's a whole list of these, and searching earlier, I couldn't find a good list that just summarized all of them in one place, but you can kind of just try different things and see what happens. JJ, what is, no, I'm trying to remember what adverb is. Yeah, some of them are intuitive, some of them are not. I think like VBD, I think, is a past tense verb, and then NNS is a plural noun. NNP, I think, is a proper noun. I don't know. Basically, it's a play with it and see what happens kind of thing. But that's what's happening. I'm just asking for random verbs, random adjectives, and random nouns every time it runs. And then every time it runs that, it's in place in this like string that's being constructed, and it's going to this expression which calls the function is going to be replaced by whatever the result of that function is. So it'll appear as just a random adjective when I run that line. So let's see what happens when I go here. Title goes here, blah, 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 and so on and so on. And here we go. All decode and no live make Jack a ambulatory octopus. That kind of worked. All rewrite and no immunize make Jack a sensuous mailman. Again, that one, at least the last part of these seems to be working if I look at it. A neighborly pushover, that's a good one. I'll dictate and no squawk make Jack a neighborly pushover. If you are reading closely, you might notice that these verbs, by the way, are being used in the grammatical sense of a noun here, because that's just how the sentence is constructed. It's more of like, it's the infinitive of like all of this decode as the thing that is happening. So there's not a way to pull that specific tense out of the RiTA.js random word thing, I don't think, but there are some different options that might be available if you go here. It's a random word. So RiTA.random word is a list of some things that you might want to try here. There are some different options that are available too, as far as the length of the word that you're selecting, the number of syllables, and some other things that could be interesting and could be useful if you're trying to make it look a little bit more coherent in terms of what the output is. Of course, this is just one way to get text out of RiTA. Another one that I hope some of you will try is the Markov chain approach. For that, you're going to need some text sources, some text files to use. I'm not going to go through that example here because it takes a bit to set it up, but it would be possible. In that case, you would probably want to add a file using the files upload method here in Open Processing. And you would probably want to load that in preload, and then you would want to check the RiTA references here for the Markov stuff. So you would want to run that, probably the add text function to start, and then it generates a sample based on that. So I will let you all read that in figure that out if that's the way you want to go. A Markov chain is a way to generate a string of text or a string of words that has statistical similarities to the source text that you trained it on. And that approach has it has some things in common conceptually with how modern generative AI, text generating AI, large language models, how those things work. Obviously, the large language models are much, much, much larger than what a Markov chain can process. But a Markov chain is the origin of the concept, and Markov chains as a concept are more than 100 years old as a computational method. I have a whole lecture about those, but I'm not going to get into that right now. Okay, so let's do one last thing. This is my book starter Git demo. I can generate something that at least looks like a book. Not a good one. Not a very, interesting approach to this assignment, honestly, but it is there. So I want to show you the final thing here, how to get a PDF out of this, or how to turn it into a PDF. The web browser can print a web page, obviously, and you can go like, Command P or whatever your shortcut is. But the problem is it's printing this as a web page. I can save it as a PDF, but it's just going to be a PDF that's like a screenshot of the first part of this page, which is not at all what I want. That's not a book. So to get to it, you have to get out of the open processing interface. And I figured out how to do that. So let's go back to the editor part. And if I go to the share button here, there are different ways I can share this, including an embed option. And right here in this embed option, there's a slightly different URL that I can use to access this sketch. So I'm going to copy this code onto my clipboard so I can see the whole thing here. I'm not going to use this as code. I just want to be able to see it. And there's a bunch of stuff here. Like, I can't see it all. Okay, actually, I have to go to my text editor so I can actually see it. It actually is not. Okay, I actually have to do two things. I was mistaken. So let me do one of them first, and then I'll do the other one. If I can get to it. All right, so there's this whole source attribute for the iframe. I wish that open processing would let me see the full line. I wish it would wrap lines, but it doesn't. So this whole bit that is the source attribute for this iframe code that it generated. If I copy this to my clipboard, I just did Command C, or I'll just do it visually here, right click, copy, and then I go to make a new tab and then paste that URL in a new tab. Well, I expected that to appear, so I expected that to appear differently. Okay, let's see, what did I do? I figured this out earlier. Let me see if I can find it again. I think it could be just frame source. Yeah, that's the frame source. This is close, but not quite what I wanted. I wanted to see the page source. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to use my element inspector to poke around here. And that's what I often do to learn things. There it is, that's what I was looking for. This is the actual source of this. So it doesn't look like it, but this whole thing, even just in a regular open processing view of the sketch, is actually loading the content I created in an iframe. And the source of that iframe is right here, is this special URL that is actually easy to derive from just the regular sketch URL. So here it is. This is just a view of the same thing, but without the open processing interface, as you can hopefully see. And I'll show you how I found that in a second, but I'm just going to make sure I can test this. If I go Command P, it is showing me a conventional PDF paginated the way that I see it in the web browser, so that's good. That's what I wanted. Okay, I don't actually know if OBS was picking that up, so that's why I was describing what I'm seeing there. This is what you want to see so you can get it as a PDF. You can print to a PDF. I think you can also probably save as a PDF from here. And if you can see in the URL, there is a special pattern to it. It's preview.openprocessing.org/sketch/2800427/preview/false/index.html. The key thing there is that number, 2800427. And that is a number that I also see in my sketch URL when I'm editing my sketch. So as I'm editing my sketch, I see openprocessing.org/sketch/2800427. So I can use that to stick into place here, and that's how I do my sketch. I could do a different one if I know the number. I have 2800016. If I can grab that one there, I'll stick it into this preview tab, and I should load. Well, it's the same thing, but it's a different sketch loading that thing. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, went through a lot here. I hope that you found this video helpful, if you were in my class or not. And I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Thanks for watching. Bye.